Dive into the darkest corners of the internet with these 5 spine-tingling horror stories from the deep web. Each tale explores a different facet of fear, from forbidden rituals to cursed games, and promises to keep you on the edge of your seat. If you think you've heard it all, think again. These stories are not for the faint of heart. Carlos had always been drawn to the dark corners of the internet, fascinated by the secrets lurking within the deep web. His fascination began as a curiosity, but soon it became an obsession. One chilly October evening, as the wind howled outside his small apartment, Carlos sat at his desk, the only light coming from the soft glow of his computer screen. He had recently heard about a clandestine forum on the deep web where people exchanged information about unsolved crimes. After days of fruitless searching, he finally stumbled upon it. The forum's design was minimalistic, almost archaic, with a stark black background and cryptic messages scattered throughout. His heart raced with excitement as he scrolled through the threads. Then he saw it, a thread titled "The Last Post." The post was a single, ominous sentence. "This is your final chance. The countdown begins now." Below the message was a link leading to an encrypted file. Carlos hesitated for a moment, a shiver running down his spine. The countdown timer in the corner of the page was ticking down from 30 minutes. Driven by a mixture of fear and curiosity, he clicked the link. The file downloaded quickly. With a trembling hand, Carlos opened it. The file was a video, labeled simply "Watch." He clicked play, and the screen flickered to life. The video showed a dimly lit room with a single, old-fashioned wooden chair in the center. Shadows danced on the walls, creating an eerie atmosphere. The camera panned slowly around the room, revealing nothing out of the ordinary, except for the deep sense of foreboding that seemed to emanate from the screen. Suddenly, the video cut to a live feed of what appeared to be a regular suburban neighborhood. The camera focused on a house that looked remarkably similar to Carlos's own. His heart pounded in his chest as he realized that the feed was from a camera mounted on a lamppost right outside his home. He saw himself walking past the camera on the video, oblivious to its presence. Panic surged through Carlos as he realized that someone was watching him in real time. He turned around, checking every corner of his apartment, but found nothing amiss. The countdown timer continued to tick down in the corner of the screen. He returned his gaze to the video, now showing footage from inside his own living room. His breath quickened as he saw the camera feed switch to a view of his desk, the very place where he was sitting. He could see his own reflection on the screen, his eyes wide with terror. The video then cut to a close-up of the timer, which was now at just under 10 minutes. The screen went dark, and a chilling voice began to speak. It was distorted and unrecognizable, but the message was clear. Your curiosity has led you to this point. The game is now over. Carlos's mind raced. He tried to close the video, but his computer froze. The timer continued to count down. Desperate, he unplugged his computer, but the countdown kept going, ticking away in his mind. His apartment was eerily silent except for the faint ticking sound that seemed to echo through the walls. The minutes seemed to drag on for hours. Each second felt like an eternity. As the timer reached the final moments, Carlos felt a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. The room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. The countdown reached 0. The screen flashed a message. "Goodbye, Carlos." The lights in his apartment flickered, and an oppressive silence fell over the room. Carlos's heart raced as he heard a faint scratching sound coming from his closet. He slowly approached, his hand trembling as he reached for the handle. The closet door creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness. He reached inside, but his hand brushed against something cold and metallic. He pulled out an old, dusty camera. exactly like the one used in the video. His mind raced as he realized that this camera had been used to record every moment of his life, capturing his every move. In a panic, Carlos threw the camera across the room. It shattered on the floor, but the feeling of dread didn't go away. The oppressive atmosphere in his apartment grew heavier, and he felt an invisible presence closing in on him. The next day, Carlos was reported missing. His apartment was found in disarray, but there was no sign of him. The only thing left behind was his computer, still frozen on the last frame of the video. His friends and family were left in a state of confusion, unable to explain his sudden disappearance. Weeks later, a chilling discovery was made. An anonymous post appeared on the same forum Carlos had visited, showing a series of disturbing images taken from the missing person's own home. Among them was a photo of Carlos, looking directly into the camera, his expression one of pure terror. The post was signed with a message, "Curiosity has its price." Carlos was never found, and his case remains unsolved. His disappearance became an urban legend, a haunting reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows of the deep web. In the dim glow of her computer screen, Anna's eyes gleamed with excitement. She had recently delved into the deep web, searching for rare and unique artifacts. Her fascination with obscure items led her to an underground marketplace known for selling rare and enigmatic objects. On this particular evening, as she sifted through listings for everything from cursed antiques to forbidden manuscripts, she stumbled upon something that immediately caught her eye: an ancient metal mask. The listing described the mask as a relic from an obscure ritualistic society. It was said to be an artifact of immense power and mystery, but it came with a warning: not for the faint of heart, wear at your own risk. Intrigued by the mask's sinister allure, Anna decided to purchase it. The transaction was completed anonymously, and the mask arrived at her doorstep within days. When the package arrived, Anna eagerly unwrapped it. The mask was made of a dark, weathered metal with intricate designs etched into its surface. It was eerily beautiful, with a craftsmanship that seemed almost otherworldly. Anna's excitement turned into a sense of foreboding as she noticed the mask had a slightly unsettling quality, as if it held secrets that were not meant to be uncovered. Unable to resist the temptation, Anna decided to try it on. The mask fit snugly over her face, its cold metal pressing against her skin. As soon as she adjusted the straps, a shiver ran down her spine. The room seemed to grow colder, and the once familiar surroundings took on a surreal, distorted quality. The mask seemed to alter her perception of reality, making the shadows in the room seem to twist and writhe. Anna looked at herself in the mirror, and what she saw sent a jolt of fear through her. The mask's eyes were hollow, and its mouth twisted into a grotesque, silent scream. The reflection that stared back at her was no longer entirely her own. It was as if the mask was drawing something out of her, something dark and unsettling. Suddenly, Anna heard a whisper, a faint, disembodied voice that seemed to emanate from within the mask. The voice spoke in a language she could not understand, its tone urgent and menacing. Anna's heart raced as the whispers grew louder, surrounding her with an eerie cacophony. She tried to remove the mask, but it seemed to be stuck, clinging to her face with an unnatural grip. Panicking, Anna stumbled through her apartment, desperately trying to tear off the mask. The whispers continued, now accompanied by a low rhythmic drumming sound that seemed to come from within her own head. Shadows in the corners of the room began to move, coalescing into dark, indistinct shapes that watched her with malevolent eyes. The temperature in the room plummeted, and Anna could see her breath misting in the air. She felt a cold hand grasping her shoulder, but when she looked, there was no one there. The room was now a nightmarish landscape, with the shadows converging and distorting into grotesque figures that seemed to reach out for her. In a final desperate attempt to free herself, Anna crashed through her apartment, knocking over furniture and smashing objects in her frantic state. The whispers grew louder and more frenzied, and the shadows seemed to close in around her. Her vision blurred as the mask's influence began to overwhelm her senses. Suddenly, the room went dark. Anna's screams echoed through the void as she felt an overwhelming presence surrounding her. The whispers ceased, and a deep, oppressive silence filled the space. When the lights flickered back on, Anna was no longer in her apartment. She found herself in a desolate, decrepit room, devoid of any familiar features. The mask was still on her face, but the whispers had stopped. Anna tried to remove it again, but it was as if the mask had fused with her skin. The walls of the room were adorned with strange symbols and carvings, and a cold wind seemed to blow from nowhere, carrying with it an aura of malevolence. In the center of the room was an altar, and on it lay several other masks, each one more grotesque and disturbing than the last. Anna felt a presence watching her, and she could sense that she was not alone. The room seemed to pulse with a dark, rhythmic energy. Despair began to consume Anna as she realized the true nature of the mask. It was not just a relic, it was a conduit to something far darker. She had unwittingly become part of a ritualistic practice, a sacrificial offering to an ancient and malevolent force. Days turned into weeks, and Anna's disappearance went unnoticed by the outside world. Her friends and family were left searching for answers, but there were no leads, no clues, only a sense of dread that seemed to linger in the air. Her apartment was found empty, save for the shattered remnants of the metal mask, lying in the center of the room as a chilling testament to the horrors that had taken place. Legends soon spread about the mask and its curse, a warning to those who might seek out forbidden artifacts. Anna's story became a haunting reminder of the dangers that lurk in the darkest corners of the deep web, a chilling tale of how curiosity and obsession can lead to unimaginable terror. The mask was never found, and Anna was never seen again. Her fate remains a mystery, a dark enigma that continues to evoke fear and fascination among those who hear her story. Lucas had always been intrigued by the macabre, and his fascination led him deep into the hidden corners of the internet. On a stormy night, with rain lashing against his windows, he stumbled across a clandestine site on the deep web. This site promised live broadcasts from some of the most forbidden places on Earth. The thrill of witnessing the unseen was irresistible, and Lucas decided to explore further. The website's interface was archaic and minimalistic, with just a few links and a list of live streams labeled with cryptic titles. Lucas clicked on one that caught his eye. Abandoned House, Real-Time Feed. The description promised an experience like no other, showing the interior of a decrepit house with a history of mysterious occurrences. As Lucas clicked on the link, the video feed came to life. The image was grainy, with a shaky, almost amateur quality. It showed a dusty, dimly lit room that seemed to have been frozen in time. The walls were lined with peeling wallpaper, and the furniture was covered in layers of grime and cobwebs. Lucas could hear the faint creaking of floorboards and the distant rumble of thunder outside. At first, the broadcast seemed like a typical haunted house setup. The camera moved slowly through the rooms, revealing a vintage lamp casting eerie shadows and a broken mirror with its reflection distorted. Lucas found himself enthralled, but a sense of unease settled over him as he noticed something unsettling. The broadcast didn't have a clear timeline. The camera seemed to jump back and forth, creating a disorienting effect. Suddenly, the feed cut to a different room. This one was filled with old, abandoned furniture and a large antique wardrobe. The room was eerily silent, except for the sound of Lucas's own breathing. As the camera panned around, Lucas noticed something strange. A figure standing motionless in the corner, partially obscured by shadows. His heart raced as he leaned closer to the screen. The figure was tall and gaunt, its face obscured by darkness. It didn't move, but Lucas could sense an ominous presence. The camera seemed to focus on the figure for a few moments before cutting to another part of the house. Lucas tried to shake off the feeling of dread, but it clung to him. The broadcast continued, showing various rooms and their dilapidated state. The camera eventually moved back to the room with the figure. This time, the figure was closer to the camera, standing in the doorway of the wardrobe. Lucas could see its eyes, dark and hollow, staring directly at the camera. A cold shiver ran down his spine. The feed flickered, and Lucas's screen went dark. Panic surged through him as he tried to reload the page, but the website wouldn't respond. He felt a growing sense of dread as he glanced around his apartment, feeling as though he was being watched. Just as he was about to give up, the feed came back. This time the video showed a close-up of the figure's face, which was now clearly visible. It had a gaunt, emaciated appearance with hollow eyes and a twisted, ghastly smile. Lucas could see that the figure's eyes were fixed on him, as though it could see through the screen and into his soul. The camera then cut to a different angle, revealing the room in full. The wardrobe door creaked open, and something inside began to stir. Lucas felt his pulse quicken as the feed showed a pair of skeletal hands emerging from the wardrobe. The figure's eyes followed the movement, and Lucas could see its smile widening. The feed abruptly cut off again, leaving Lucas in the dark. He felt an overwhelming sense of unease as he sat in silence, the only sound being the storm outside. His apartment felt colder, and he could almost feel the presence of something malevolent lurking nearby. Desperate to find out what was happening, Lucas tried to contact the website's administrators, but received no response. He decided to investigate the abandoned house from the broadcast, convinced that it was connected to the chilling experience he had just witnessed. The next day, Lucas drove to the address listed on the website. The house was located on the outskirts of town, shrouded in fog and decay. The building was even more dilapidated in person, with boarded-up windows and overgrown weeds. He approached the front door, which creaked open with a groan. Inside, the house was as grim as it appeared online. Dust hung thick in the air, and the silence was oppressive. Lucas carefully made his way through the rooms, each step echoing through the empty halls. He reached the room with the wardrobe, the same one from the broadcast. His breath caught in his throat as he saw the wardrobe standing in the corner, its door slightly ajar. As he approached, Lucas noticed something on the floor. A small, old-fashioned camera, similar to the one used in the broadcast. He picked it up, his hands trembling. The camera was still recording. He played back the footage and was horrified to see the same live feed from the night before. The footage showed the figure standing in the doorway of the wardrobe, its eyes locked onto the camera. Suddenly the recording stopped, and the camera's screen went dark. Lucas felt a cold breeze and turned around to see the wardrobe door swinging open on its own. He took a step back as the figure from the broadcast emerged, its hollow eyes fixated on him. The room seemed to close in around him, and he could feel an icy grip on his shoulder. Panic overtook him, and Lucas fled from the house, leaving the camera behind. He drove away as fast as he could, his mind racing with fear. He never spoke of what happened that day, and he avoided the deep web entirely. The abandoned house was later found empty, with no sign of Lucas. Weeks passed, and Lucas's disappearance remained a mystery. The house was eventually demolished, but rumors persisted about the haunted live feed, and the figure that had been captured on camera. Lucas was never found, and his story became a chilling legend, a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in the hidden depths of the internet. To this day, some claim to have seen the same figure on other live feeds, a dark reminder of the sinister presence that had once been broadcasted to a curious viewer. Emily had always been a thrill-seeker, and her latest fascination with the deep web had led her to explore a notorious forum known for sharing the darkest and most forbidden knowledge. She was drawn to a thread titled "The Forgotten Ritual, a Guide to Ancient Dark Arts." The thread boasted about revealing a ritual that had been long forgotten, promising power and secrets beyond imagination. Curiosity got the better of Emily, and she downloaded the detailed guide from the thread. The document was filled with archaic symbols and descriptions of the ritual, which involved summoning an entity from another realm. Despite the warnings about the dangers involved, Emily felt an irresistible pull to try the ritual, convinced that she could handle whatever came her way. One night, with the wind howling outside and a storm brewing on the horizon, Emily set up a makeshift altar in her basement. The ritual required various components: candles, an ancient book of incantations, and a mysterious amulet that she had managed to acquire from a different, more obscure part of the deep web. She followed the instructions meticulously, lighting the candles and arranging the symbols on the floor. As the storm raged outside, Emily began the ritual. She chanted the incantations from the book, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. The basement grew colder, and the flickering candlelight cast eerie shadows on the walls. The amulet, which had been placed at the center of the ritual space, began to glow with an unnatural light. The atmosphere thickened, and Emily could feel an oppressive presence in the room. The air grew heavy, and the shadows on the walls seemed to writhe and twist. She pressed on with the ritual, her heart pounding in her chest. The book's instructions called for a final chant to summon the entity, and as she recited the words, a deep rumble echoed through the basement. Suddenly, the candles extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. Emily's breath quickened as she tried to relight the candles, but her matches and lighter wouldn't work. The oppressive silence was shattered by a low, guttural growl that seemed to come from all directions. The temperature dropped further, and Emily could see her breath misting in the frigid air. In the pitch-black darkness, Emily heard faint whispers, like a chorus of voices speaking in a language she didn't understand. The whispers grew louder, and the growl intensified, creating an unsettling symphony of terror. Desperate and terrified, Emily fumbled for her phone to use its flashlight. When she finally turned it on, the light revealed a horrifying sight. The symbols she had drawn on the floor were no longer in their original positions. They had shifted, forming a new, intricate pattern that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. The amulet was gone, and in its place was a dark, swirling vortex at the center of the room. The vortex seemed to be pulling the shadows into it, creating a whirlpool of darkness that threatened to consume everything. Emily tried to back away, but the vortex seemed to reach out for her, its dark tendrils grasping at her legs. She struggled to free herself, but the more she fought, the stronger the pull became. The whispers grew into a cacophony of screaming voices, and Emily felt a cold, claw-like grip on her arm. She could see glimpses of nightmarish figures swirling around the vortex, their faces twisted in agony. In a desperate bid to escape, Emily grabbed the book and hurled it at the vortex. The moment the book made contact, the vortex shrieked and erupted in a blinding flash of light. The basement was suddenly illuminated, and the oppressive presence seemed to vanish. The candles relit themselves, and the room returned to its original state, except for one crucial detail. The amulet was gone. Emily stumbled out of the basement, her mind reeling from the experience. She was shaken, disoriented, and deeply unnerved by what she had witnessed. She decided to abandon the ritual and never speak of it again. However, the sense of dread did not leave her. She began to notice strange occurrences, shadows moving on their own, whispers in the dark, and an ever-present feeling of being watched. Days turned into weeks, and Emily's life became increasingly troubled. Her dreams were plagued by nightmarish visions of the vortex and the entities she had seen. She started to isolate herself, avoiding friends and family as she struggled with the terror that had been unleashed. The house itself seemed to change. Rooms felt colder, and the atmosphere was thick with a lingering sense of malevolence. One night, Emily awoke to the sound of scratching at her bedroom door. Heart racing, she opened the door to find nothing but darkness. The scratching continued, growing louder and more frantic. She could hear the whispers again, more urgent and insistent than before. Desperate, she tried to flee the house, but the door wouldn't open. The room seemed to close in on her, the walls pressing in with an oppressive force. In a final act of desperation, Emily called out to any higher power she believed in, pleading for help. The scratching ceased, and the room fell eerily silent. She felt a sudden, intense cold, and then, as quickly as it had started, everything stopped. The whispers faded, and the room returned to its normal state. Exhausted and terrified, Emily collapsed onto the floor, her mind struggling to process the events. The next morning, Emily's friends found her in a state of shock. She was unable to explain what had happened, and her mental state deteriorated rapidly. She was eventually hospitalized, and the house was abandoned. No one ever discovered what truly transpired in that basement, and Emily never fully recovered from the trauma. The house remained empty, a dark and ominous presence lingering in the neighborhood. Locals spoke of strange occurrences and eerie lights in the windows. Emily's story became a chilling legend, a stark reminder of the dangers of delving too deeply into forbidden knowledge and rituals. The forgotten ritual continued to circulate on the deep web, a warning to those who might be tempted to seek out ancient and dark powers. Emily's tale serves as a haunting reminder of the thin line between curiosity and catastrophe, and the terrifying consequences of crossing it. Tom was an avid gamer and a tech enthusiast, always on the lookout for the latest and most obscure online content. His obsession led him to discover a hidden forum on the deep web that was rumored to host the most clandestine and forbidden games. Among the threads and posts, one particular game stood out, the Whispering Web. It was described as an interactive horror experience that promised an unparalleled level of immersion and dread. The forum's description claimed that the game was more than just a virtual experience. It suggested that players might find themselves dealing with things beyond their understanding. Despite the ominous warnings, Tom's curiosity got the better of him. He downloaded the game from a shadowy link provided in the forum and began the installation process. The game itself was shrouded in mystery. It had no official name on the title screen, just a chilling minimalist design with a single option. Enter. Tom clicked on it, and the screen went black for a moment before illuminating with eerie, distorted imagery. The game's opening scene was unsettling, a dark forest at twilight, with twisted trees and a fog that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. As Tom progressed through the game, he encountered cryptic messages and unsettling scenes. The game seemed to respond to his actions in ways that defied conventional game mechanics. Characters in the game would directly address him, and the environment seemed to react to his choices in real time. What began as a series of eerie, unsettling encounters quickly escalated into something far more disturbing. One night, while playing alone in his dimly lit apartment, Tom reached a new level in the game titled The Whispering Forest. The objective was to navigate through a maze-like forest and uncover hidden clues about a mysterious entity known as the Whisperer. As Tom ventured deeper into the game, the atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive. The forest seemed to close in around him, and the whispers of the game's characters became more urgent and chaotic. The game's whispers were unnervingly realistic, echoing in Tom's ears and creating a sense of constant paranoia. He could hear faint voices that seemed to be just out of reach, murmuring incoherently. The deeper he went, the more the whispers became personal, mentioning his name and his past experiences. Tom tried to ignore them, but the sensation of being watched was overwhelming. At one point, Tom's in-game character stumbled upon a decrepit cabin in the woods. The cabin was filled with old, dusty furniture and strange symbols scrawled on the walls. In the center of the room was a large, ornate mirror. As Tom's character approached the mirror, the game's screen flickered, and the reflection seemed to show something different, an empty, dark void where Tom's room should have been. The mirror's reflection began to move independently of Tom's character. Tom watched in horror as the reflection showed shadows moving and shapes distorting. The whispers grew louder and more frantic, and Tom could feel his pulse quicken. The mirror's surface started to ripple, and Tom's character reached out to touch it. As the character's hand made contact with the mirror, the screen went black, and Tom's computer shut down abruptly. He tried to reboot it, but the machine wouldn't turn on. Panic set in as Tom realized that the game had left an imprint on his reality. He could still hear the whispers, faint and eerie, as though they were coming from inside his own mind. Determined to investigate, Tom decided to check his apartment for any anomalies. The first thing he noticed was a series of strange symbols appearing on his walls, symbols that matched those from the game. The whispers continued, now more distinct and clearer, calling out to him in unsettling tones. He felt an oppressive presence in his apartment, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Tom spent the next few days researching the game and its origins, but he found little information. The whispers grew more insistent, and his sleep was plagued by nightmares of the whispering forest and the entities within it. He began to see glimpses of shadowy figures in the corners of his vision, and his once comfortable apartment became a source of constant anxiety. One night, the whispers reached a crescendo, and Tom felt an icy coldness enveloping him. He saw a figure standing in the dark corner of his living room, its features obscured by darkness. The figure seemed to be made of shadows, with glowing eyes that bore into him. Tom's fear escalated as the figure began to move toward him, its presence filling the room with an overwhelming sense of dread. Tom tried to escape, but the door to his apartment was inexplicably locked. He was trapped, and the figure drew closer, its whispers now a chaotic cacophony of voices. In a desperate attempt to escape, Tom grabbed a chair and swung it at the figure, but it passed through the apparition as if it were made of smoke. As the figure reached out for him, Tom's mind raced. He realized that the game had somehow crossed the boundary between the virtual and the real. The entity from the game had come to life, using the game's interface as a conduit to enter his world. He frantically searched for a way to break the connection, and in a moment of clarity, he remembered that the game had mentioned an exit ritual to sever the bond. Tom raced to his computer, which had miraculously turned on again. He quickly searched for the exit ritual, following the instructions with trembling hands. The ritual involved destroying the game's files and performing a series of actions to sever the connection between the game and the entity. As he completed the ritual, the whispers grew louder and more frantic, and the shadowy figure seemed to be reaching out to stop him. With a final, desperate click, Tom deleted the game and its files from his computer. The moment the files were gone, the figure let out a chilling scream, and the oppressive presence in the room dissipated. The shadows receded, and the whispers faded into silence. Tom collapsed, exhausted and shaken, as the reality of what he had experienced began to sink in. The following day, Tom moved out of his apartment, unable to shake the feeling of being watched. He never spoke of the game or the entity, and he avoided the deep web entirely. The whispers never returned, but the memory of the whispering web haunted him. He became a cautionary tale among those who delved too deeply into forbidden knowledge, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the darkest corners of the internet. Tom's story serves as a warning to those who seek out the most forbidden and terrifying experiences. The whispering web remains a haunting legend, a dark reminder of the thin line between virtual horror and reality. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and activate the bell so you don't miss any macabre tales from our channel. Share with your friends to spread the terror, and leave your comment about which story scared you the most.